everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Shaki and today I'm going to be doing my greenathon review of Looking for Alaska by John Green. Obviously, this is my favourite book of all time, so this review might not be the most objective, but we're going to talk about my favourite book of all time and I'm so excited. So hello, yes, I'm doing another one of my greenathon reviews. If you don't know what the greenathon is, it's basically a year-long readathon of all of John Green's books that I'm currently hosting. I will leave a link down below. There are 2 more books that you can join in with. The Fault in Our Stars, which is happening from November 10th to December 10th, which is going on when you're watching this. So go to the Twitter, we're probably reading it right now, so go ahead and read with us. And then from the 15th to the 31st of December 2019, we'll be reading Let It Snow by John Green, Lauren Miracle and Maureen Johnson. So yes, if you are in the time frame for the end of 2019, you can still read with us for 2 more reads. 2 more books. But from September 10th to October 10th, we read Looking for Alaska, obviously by John Green. And today I'm doing the well-awaited review for this because I have been putting it off and putting it off due to pressure and not wanting to fail and missing things out. But I finally just sucked it up and I've written a review that I think is final and finished for my favourite book of all time. Looking for Alaska follows a boy, our boy main protagonist Miles, who is absolutely sick of his hometown. He is so unpopular, he hates it, and he just feels like there's nothing great for him to achieve there and he really would like to move. He has selected to move to a boarding school called Culver Creek, which is notoriously known for its pranks, and he gets in a lot more trouble than he bargained for. Looking for Alaska surrounds Miles and his self-discovery to seek his great perhaps and realising what it truly means to lose someone extremely special to him. So if you didn't know, I am absolutely in love with Miles Holter, aka Pudge. He is given the nickname Pudge as a little bit of irony because he is so slim. I think that Miles can come off as a very simplistic character, but he actually is really complex and he is so unmasculine. It's unreal. He's heavily relatable, especially to me, in the way that he thinks and that he feels. He is absolutely obsessed with famous people's last words and just an all-around little nerd that you want to protect and give him some fucking air conditioning or at least a fucking fan. I also love all of the other characters as well, especially the main trio. So we've got Alaska, the Colonel aka Chip Martin, and Takumi as well. Alaska and the Colonel are great characters outside their friendship, but together they are this dynamic duo of pranks and puns and just all-around smart and intelligentness. Them two, Miles and Takumi, make this kind of really badass friendship group that has a really tough and hard exterior, but in the inside they're soft and gooey for each other. The actual plot of Looking for Alaska is quite slow and it could be described as quite weak. So if you are a reader that likes plot and characters or just plot on its own, maybe Looking for Alaska isn't specifically tailored to you and your tastes. However, these characters and this world are some of the best I have ever read. They are so funny and the world is so comforting. Honestly, to me, reading this is like coming home. But again, this is my favourite book of all time, so this might not be the most objective review there is. Ultimately, these characters show that teens can be intelligent, can be philosophical, can think about life in ways that aren't stereotypically teenagers, and have problems that normally are, you know, sectioned for adults in fiction and teen fiction in particular. Despite the plot being a little bit weak or a little bit slow or a little bit sluggish, grief is intertwined within it and we see the grief cycle quite a lot within it, within a lot of characters. We see the grief cycle tailored to each character, and in particularly for Miles and the Colonel, it is surrounded by a lot of grief and guilt. The friendship group go through something unimaginable, and I really don't want to spoil it for you because that makes this book kind of pointless if you go through this spoiler, but they go through something extremely unimaginable and you see the way it shifts and changes them, and I find that really, really relatable and just great. With this change, a lot of that comes with anger, which is a really, really natural part of anyone's grief cycle. I found this representation of grief and death in general to be extremely realistic to my personal experiences of losing a loved one. I actually read this at age 14 and I hadn't lost anyone in my family yet. I'd lost like a few distant aunties and uncles and stuff like that, but I hadn't actually lost anyone really close to me. And since rereading this, 2 of my grandparents, an auntie and great aunt, have also died. And now after all of that has happened and I've gained that experience and I can relate to this a little bit more, I just have read this with such an open mind, and I found more ways to love it, and that is a sign of a really, really good book. I feel like everyone is going to read Looking for Alaska a little bit differently because they all relate to Alaska, Persia, Colonel Takumi in different ways. Even the deepest, darkest parts of us can be staring at us through the mirror that is the page, and I feel like if you're reading this, a lot of it will speak to you in different ways, and obviously I will pick up on things and in my experiences that are different to yours, and I think that is the beauty of this book and why I love it so much. As I briefly mentioned, Culver Creek is notoriously known for its pranks, and these pranks, although realistically they wouldn't happen in real life, they are just kind of like comic relief from all the tension that is currently happening in the narrative between all the friends. It just brings the harshness of reality back down to the fiction world, and I can really appreciate the breaks in the tension of the narrative because it would get really tense and really sad really quickly if there wasn't the pranks. Within Looking for Alaska, there are a lot of triggers. So for example, we have talks of suicide in here and a possible suicide. So I thought I'd put that in here just to warn you about some of the conversations that will ensue because of that subject matter. There are also talks of sex, relationships, binge drinking and drug taking. So be careful of that if those things affect you. There are a lot of scenes in the book and the TV show where there is an assumed suicide or a question whether a character has taken their own life. This means that there are some exchanging of dialogue in terms of kind of victim blaming. However, these pieces of dialogue where they are kind of blaming the person they believe to have killed themselves, they are challenged and they aren't believed by the end of the novel, which I could really appreciate. I think the depiction of mental health and suicide is much different from other novels that try and do this because it kind of hones in on the effects of not being a good friend and not listening to cues that your friends are giving you that they are potentially suffering or aren't unwell. I guess one of the main themes that I haven't discussed yet that I really do enjoy about Looking for Alaska is the fact that it deep dives into what it means to be a friend and who we can trust and who we can't trust, not in just terms of the pranks and things, but in also terms of mental health and potential suicide. I have said this time and time again, but I think one of the ways that Looking for Alaska could have been improved, although it is my favourite book of all time, I won't argue with you that there are some flaws within it because it was written quite a long time ago, and that's no excuse. I do acknowledge the fact that some parts of it are problematic. But I think one of the ways that it could have been improved is if there was a shift in time frame and or of the characters. I do think that the characters within this are extremely mature and extremely philosophical, which I like John Green's other books and characters. That isn't exactly a huge big deal, to be honest, to me anyway. But I do think the Looking for Alaska story and the nature of the themes and the characters, it would have benefited from being a new adult novel rather than a young adult novel. And what I mean by this is targeting an audience that are already at university, and being set at university would make more of sense to me, especially with the storyline of mental health, the pranks, Miles getting used to his own great perhaps and his new surroundings. It would have made sense for the novel to be new adult rather than young adult and kind of, you know, branch out to people that are living in university rather than a boarding school. Looking for Alaska in particular is very heavy in subject matter and philosophy, like all John Green books, but this takes it to the next level. So I do personally believe that the storyline could have been a little bit stronger. The effect might have been a little bit bigger for other people if it had have been targeted to a university audience and also set at university as well. That being said, that kind of takes away from the fact that, you know, teens can think about these adult issues as well. People who are teenagers still do experience grief and loss, and it is on a wide scale. Teen feelings aren't, you know, invalid, and they are things that we need to consider in terms of, you know, mental health and the whole mental illness discussion that is apparent in our society right now. The teens feel things, and that is entirely valid, and they are intelligent and they struggle as well. So that was my review of John Green's Looking for Alaska, one of my favourite books of all time. My BookTube channel and my Bookstagram are both named after this book. I find it so nostalgic and lovely to come back to time and time again. I feel like if I didn't have my experiences with death and grieving, then I wouldn't like this as much as I do, but because I am me and I'm reading this with my experiences, and obviously my experiences are different to yours, I love this and I just can't explain what kind of connection I have with it. So yeah, there was my well-awaited review of Looking for Alaska by John Green within the Greenathon. I really hope that you enjoyed reading with me, and I hope that you enjoyed this review. If you did, please give it a massive thumbs up and subscribe, possibly my The Fault in Our Stars and Let It Snow reviews will be coming very soon, and I really hope that you stick around and watch them as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!